For more than a decade, people around the world watched quietly as one of Hollywood's most familiar fathers drifted further from his only daughter. That long silence has begun to break, and the truth behind their distance feels heavier than many ever imagined. Suri, once known as Suri Cruz, grew up beneath a constant light she never asked to stand in. She carried a name the world recognized, even on the days she wished it wouldn't. She entered life already known, raised behind guarded doors, often separated from her father by forces far larger than anything a young heart could fully understand. And now, at 19, she speaks not through interviews or statements, but through the quiet clarity of her choices. Those choices have surprised many who still remember the image of a perfect family moving gracefully along red carpets. This is the story of a daughter who spent her childhood watching her father from a distance, and a father who slowly felt her presence slip from the rhythm of his everyday life. It began almost like a scene crafted for the screen. When Tom Cruise and Katie Holmes crossed paths in 2005, their connection became a headline before the relationship had time to settle into something private. Katie, just 26 then, carried the glow of her Dawson's Creek years, an actress with a gentle charm and the hopefulness of someone stepping into a bright future. Tom, already 43 and a global figure, held iconic roles like Top Gun, Jerry Maguire, and Mission Impossible across his career. He was the kind of star whose name alone could fill theaters around the world. For Katie, this wasn't just another Hollywood romance. Years before, she had told 17 magazine that her dream was to marry Tom Cruise. It sounded gentle, almost youthful, something no one expected to drift from imagination into real life. But the story shifted the moment Tom saw her. He reportedly told his team, "I'm going to marry her." And from there, everything moved with remarkable speed. Within weeks, what once felt impossible began to take shape. Their connection appeared so strong it seemed to write its own script, and their relationship captured the public's attention almost immediately. Cameras followed them through Rome as they walked hand in hand, laughing softly, as if the rest of the world had faded from view. Even Tom, known for his privacy, appeared swept up in the emotion of it all. Then came the moment that left nearly everyone talking. His visit to the Oprah Winfrey Show, where he stood on the couch and announced, "I'm in love." Reactions varied. Some found it tender, others unusual, but no one looked away. On April 18, 2006, their daughter Suri arrived, a child instantly linked to the intensity of their whirlwind love story. Tom described her arrival as the happiest day of my life, referring to her as a miracle. Yet even that moment was shaped by the beliefs that anchored much of his world. Katie, who had grown up attending Catholic school in Toledo, suddenly found herself navigating a very different spiritual landscape. Her pregnancy and Suri's birth followed Scientology practices, including the quiet delivery tradition, where voices in the room remained silent during the moment a child entered the world. Tom even went as far as purchasing a sonogram machine so he could follow the pregnancy from home. To many on the outside, it seemed unusual, perhaps even overwhelming. But for Tom, it was simply an expression of devotion, a way of staying close to the journey unfolding before them. Their wedding that November unfolded like something from a grand storybook. Set within the 15th century Odescalchi castle in Italy, it reportedly carried a price tag of more than $3 million. Katie wore Giorgio Armani, Tom radiated pride, and guests included names like Jennifer Lopez, Will Smith, and the Beckhams. Yet beneath the elegant smiles, there was a quiet tension. Katie's parents, devoted Catholics, felt uneasy about the world now surrounding their daughter and granddaughter. And in time, their concerns proved real. The fairy tale glow began to fade. Life grew more structured, more secluded, shaped by beliefs, privacy, and layers of influence that were difficult to fully understand from the outside. For Tom, every step still felt anchored in love. For Katie, the walls around their life slowly felt less like protection and more like distance. And for Suri, this marked the beginning of a childhood unlike anything most could imagine. By 2007, Tom Cruise and Katie Holmes still appeared untouchable. They remained the image of a Hollywood dream: red carpets, private flights, magazine covers, a family admired from afar. But inside their home, the first quiet fractures had already begun to form, long before the world realized what was coming next. They appeared flawless to the world: the celebrated actor, his radiant wife, and their picture-perfect daughter. Yet behind that polished image, something quiet was shifting, even if the cameras never caught it. Friends began to notice that Katie rarely went anywhere on her own. Whenever she stepped outside, someone from Tom's close circle, often connected to Scientology, was beside her, moving with a calm, watchful presence. Even during the simplest outings, she was surrounded by composed faces who seemed to observe every small detail of her behavior. One evening, over dinner, journalist Maureen Orth sensed a subtle tension when admirers approached their table. Katie offered a polite smile, then said something that left Orth momentarily still. "Oh, we don't go outside very much." The words were gentle, almost casual, but to those familiar with the structure around her life, they suggested far more than they revealed. Tom, meanwhile, remained the steady, unwavering figure he had always been: confident, charismatic, and deeply committed to the beliefs that shaped his world. He stood as one of Scientology's most prominent supporters, often speaking for the organization, defending it with conviction, and guiding others towards its teachings. To him, it offered clarity, discipline, and purpose. But for Katie, those same boundaries felt like spaces she was never meant to fully step beyond. Her parents, Martin and Kathleen Holmes, watched from a distance with increasing concern, grounded in their long-held Catholic faith and unsure of the world their daughter now lived within. They had long felt uneasy about the quiet, structured world surrounding their daughter. As time passed, their visits grew less frequent, unsure how to reach her through the distance slowly forming around her life. Friends noticed a change too. Katie began to feel distant, almost rehearsed at times, repeating the same gentle phrases about Tom. "He's amazing. He's wonderful." Words that sounded sincere, yet carried a softness that made some wonder if she was trying to reassure herself as much as anyone else. That bright spark she once carried began to dim, little by little. Meanwhile, Tom's older children with Nicole Kidman, Bella and Connor, were deeply connected to Scientology, fully rooted in its teachings. For Tom, it felt natural to imagine his youngest child eventually growing within the same belief system. But Katie struggled with the idea of surrendering that much influence over her daughter's future, especially when she felt she didn't completely understand the foundation shaping it. So she began pulling back, slowly, quietly, and with great care. By 2010, whispers circulated that she felt confined. She avoided certain church gatherings, reconnected with familiar faces from her past, and started spending more time in New York, further from Tom's daily rhythm. Behind the scenes, she wasn't drifting. She was preparing, learning, organizing, making sure that when the moment came, she would be ready. By 2011, the strain had become impossible to overlook. Katie's public smiles grew tighter, her movements more cautious. The image once celebrated as a modern fairy tale now revealed a young woman simply trying to stay steady. And each time she clasped her daughter's hand a little closer, she was already shaping a quiet plan, one that would soon shift the landscape of Hollywood and soften the polished image of the family the world thought it knew. Everyone believed they understood the story until June 29, 2012, the day Hollywood seemed to pause. News arrived that Katie Holmes had filed for divorce from Tom Cruise just days before his 50th birthday. But this was far more than the ending of a marriage. It was a carefully measured step rooted in protection, strategy, and the hope of building a safer future. Tom later reflected that he never expected it. He said, "It hit me hard, quietly. Life can do that to you." What he didn't know was that Katie had spent months preparing, moving with the caution of someone aware she was being observed closely. She changed phones, hired new security, replaced staff she feared might share information, and planned each decision with deliberate care. Her father, Martin Holmes, a lawyer known for his sharp sense of strategy, became the quiet architect behind her departure. Years earlier, he had helped shape the prenuptial agreement, and now it served as the foundation of her exit. Katie chose New York as the place to file, understanding that the state's laws offered stronger support for a parent seeking to protect a child's future. She moved everything forward in complete secrecy. While Tom was in Iceland filming Oblivion, he learned about the divorce at the same time as the rest of the world through breaking headlines. For someone accustomed to managing every detail of his life, the news arrived like a sudden shock. In the documents that followed, her intention became clear: protection. And that single word reshaped how the public viewed everything that had quietly unfolded behind closed doors. Katie sought full custody of her daughter, full guidance over schooling, healthcare, and the gentle shaping of her spiritual life. Her concern was never directed at Tom as a person, but at the powerful structure surrounding him. Former members of Scientology later suggested she feared her daughter might one day be encouraged toward the organization's strict Sea Org program. It was a possibility she could not bring herself to accept. The legal process concluded with remarkable speed. In just 11 days, the settlement was complete. Tom agreed to contribute about $400,000 a year in support until adulthood, along with additional costs for education and healthcare. But finances had never been Katie's focus. What she sought, what she needed, was distance, legal distance, physical distance, and spiritual distance. The day after the agreement was signed, she and her daughter left Los Angeles quietly, slipping away from the world that had once surrounded them. When photographers eventually found them, they were walking through Chelsea and New York City, hand in hand, without security following their steps. Katie looked tired, worn by the long months behind her, but something in her expression was unmistakable. She looked free, and when she smiled it felt genuine, something soft and real, a kind of smile she had not shown in public for years. For her daughter, this new life came with space and calm, and the father who had once carried her along red carpets and called her his miracle was suddenly absent. Not through conflict, not through anger, simply absent. And in that quiet distance, a new chapter unfolded, one that did not belong to Hollywood or to any organization.
In 2013, during a rare deposition tied to a lawsuit, lawyers asked the question many had wondered about. Had Katie left in order to protect her daughter from Scientology? Tom pushed back, calling the question offensive. But then he acknowledged that it was true as one of the assertions. It was the closest he ever came to recognizing the deeper divide. Reports later noted that he saw his daughter only once after the separation, a brief, private meeting. After that, there were no photographs, no public sightings, no confirmed visits. The connection simply faded into silence. In the years that followed, Tom immersed himself even more fully into his work. Mission Impossible films, the long-awaited Top Gun sequel, global press tours, and daring stunts that seemed to grow more astonishing with every project. Audiences applauded as he scaled buildings or leapt from planes. But far from those bright lights, his daughter continued growing, quietly and steadily, without him.
Meanwhile, Katie shaped a calm and grounded life for her child in New York. She enrolled her in a private Manhattan school, spent afternoons in parks, visited neighborhood cafes, and brought her to dance classes. Small, simple routines that helped her feel like any other child. Friends described her as bright, warm, and refreshingly down-to-earth. For someone born into the noise of celebrity life, Katie kept her daughter carefully sheltered from it. No red carpets, no interviews, no flashing lights. As she moved into her teenage years, she grew into a reflection of her mother, the same eyes, the same gentle smile, the same quiet resilience. But whenever her father's name appeared in conversation, she would simply guide the moment elsewhere and continue on. Publicly, Tom never spoke about her again. Privately, those close to the family said he continued to support her education and medical needs. Yet even as more than 10 years passed, there was still no photographs of them together. The man whose presence could stop traffic at a film premiere seemed unable to find a way back into the life of his youngest child. It was as if their worlds now drifted on entirely separate paths. Then, slowly, a change began to appear. A new name, and with it, a quiet new chapter. By 2021, she was no longer seen only as the daughter of actors. She was shaping something of her own. She attended New York's LaGuardia High School of Music and Art and Performing Arts, the school that inspired the film fame. There, she sang, acted, directed short films with classmates, and began discovering a creative voice uniquely her own. And during her senior year, she made a choice that revealed something deeper growing within her. When the program for the school's production of The Addams Family was released, one detail immediately stood out to everyone who knew her story. Her name was no longer listed as Suri Cruz, but Suri Noel, carrying her mother's middle name. It wasn't simply a choice for a school program. It was a quiet declaration, a gentle step into her own identity and her own world. And when she graduated in June 2024, that name appeared again, printed clearly on the official list. Tom was not present for the ceremony. He was thousands of miles away, seen at a Taylor Swift concert in London. For those who remembered the proud father of 2006, the contrast felt unmistakable. Katie, however, was there in New York, seated among the other parents, applauding, wiping her eyes, watching her daughter take her first steps into adulthood. She had raised her child without Hollywood's shield and without a father by her side, leaning only on patience and quiet strength. Later that summer, Suri began a new journey at Carnegie Mellon University in Pittsburgh, choosing to study fashion. Katie helped her move into her dorm, carrying boxes herself, just another parent helping a child begin a new chapter. No guards, no cameras, simply a mother and daughter creating a small moment of normalcy in a life that had rarely known it. That fall, Katie started directing a new film titled Happy Hours, reuniting with her former Dawson's Creek co-star, Joshua Jackson. During filming in 2025, Suri visited the set. Now 19, composed and self-assured, dressed in khaki pants, a white tank top, red sneakers, and carrying the calm presence shaped by years of choosing silence over spectacle. Most people didn't recognize her at first. She carried herself with a quiet confidence, as if she had finally stepped into the path that had always belonged to her. Her message required no words. She was no longer living as the daughter of a famous figure. She was Suri Noel, and her sense of freedom no longer lived in whispers. Then came a moment that gently moved audiences across social media. In October 2025, she was seen in New York, seated on a doorstep, her head resting in her hands, looking tired and deep in thought. A few minutes later, Katie arrived in an Uber, joined her on the step, and placed a comforting hand on her back. They spoke softly before rising and walking off together in search of a pastry. To those passing by, it might have looked like a simple exchange between a mother and her daughter. But for those who knew the long road behind them, it felt like a tender reminder of how carefully they had held on to each other since their lives had shifted so many years ago. At 19, Suri is now a college sophomore, studying fashion, writing her own music, and discovering who she hopes to become. Her connection with her father remains distant. He continues to support her education and health needs, yet they have not been photographed together or spoken publicly for more than a decade. Tom, meanwhile, continues rising to new professional heights, preparing for projects that reach beyond Earth itself. The man who once transformed Hollywood now looks toward space, yet the space between him and his youngest child may be the one distance he cannot bridge. Those close to the family say Katie has chosen not to let resentment root. Instead, she focuses on gratitude, on quiet progress, and on the steady joy of watching her daughter's strength and independence unfold. She calls Suri an extraordinary person and speaks of her with the soft pride of someone who understands just how far a young heart can travel. Still, even with a new name and a life she is shaping on her own terms, Suri carries a story woven from affection, expectation, and the gentle realities of growing up beside fame. For 19 years, the world has watched their lives unfold like a film with missing scenes, the legendary actor offering unforgettable performances, and the daughter who moved out of his shadow through sheer calm resilience. And now, as Suri Noel builds a world that reflects her own voice, a quiet question lingers in the air. Whether she will welcome her father back into her life one day, or whether time has allowed the distance to settle too deeply. Whether silence can soften with age, or whether some partings simply become permanent. If this journey stirred something in you, feel free to share your reflections in the comments and gently tap the like button to support the work. For more stories told with care, I invite you to subscribe. See you in the next story.